First of all, I would like to clarify these two books are in my top 5 books of all time. Yep, that's it. That's all the clarification. But we're going to have a death battle and we will see which one of them is better. So both of these books, The Way of Kings and A Game of Thrones, they are both the first book in their respective epic fantasy stories. But I don't want to make this all about me, and I want you to go down in the comments below and tell me which one do you prefer. Alright, let's go. Okay, let's talk about the characters, because this one I think is the most personal, and I think this one might anger a lot of people. But I think that there has to be a lot of the time two things with characters. The character has to have either a flaw, number one, or number two, they have to be well tested. And both of these authors do these two things exceptionally well. In fact, Brandon Sanderson tests his characters very well, and George R. R. Martin has a lot of flawed, morally ambiguous characters. But the question is, since I respect both of their characters, which one do I prefer? And here's the answer. I prefer the characters of George R. R. Martin. And the reason why is because, of course, George R. R. Martin, first of all, has flaws with his characters. But on top of that, despite having, morally ambiguous characters, he still tests these characters very well. He still challenges them, and he still causes them to question the, actions. And he doesn't do that with Cersei in this book. He doesn't also do that with Jaime Lannister. But a lot of the time with Tyrion Lannister, with Ned Stark, and with Jon Snow, we get these characters well tested. Not only does George R. R. Martin has a quality that Brandon Sanderson does not have, which is moral ambiguity in his characters, he also tests his characters as well as Brandon Sanderson. Okay, not as well, but technically speaking, he still tests his characters very well. Not as good as Brandon Sanderson in my eyes, but yes, he still tests them very well. Which means, overall, as far as it goes, George wins. It's just by pure numbers. He has 2 qualities to his characters, and Brandon Sanderson has 1 quality. And here's a blasphemy, right? But here's a blasphemy from me, which will sound like an insane hypocrisy. In the last video talking about Brandon Sanderson versus Patrick Rothfuss, I actually outlined why I prefer Brandon Sanderson over Patrick Rothfuss. In fact, it was a death battle, much like this, and Brandon Sanderson won for me. In that video, I said I prefer stylized prose over, in fact, minimalist prose. Brandon Sanderson has a very minimalist prose. I said I don't like his writing style, but it's going to be hypocritical when I say I actually prefer Brandon Sanderson's writing style over George R. R. Martin. And there is one reason, because you see, much like Patrick Rothfuss, George R. R. Martin's writing style, it is stylized. It is not minimalist. It does not try to be invisible. I prefer that. However, when stylized comes in conflict and distracts from the story and makes the story difficult to comprehend and to follow along, I will prefer minimalist or invisible. And in the last video, that's why I preferred Patrick Rothfuss's prose, because guess what? Even though he had very unique voice, even though he had poetic language, it didn't interfere with the story. In fact, it enhanced it. It made it better. But compare that with George R. R. Martin. His writing style, which is stylized, does not add to the story. It takes it away. The Game of Thrones, the second time I was rereading it, I was like, dude, did I read this book like before? Like, this is a completely different book, because I was noticing a lot more. Of course, it's the second reread and the world is very detailed, but with The Way of Kings, it felt perfectly normal. It felt perfectly normal, and I felt I had the whole image the first time I finished it, right? And for writing style, I prefer Brandon Sanderson's prose. I prefer his writing style. And then let's talk about why I DNF'd The Way of Kings for the first time I read it, but I did not DNF A Game of Thrones. Okay, so the way it goes is this, right? The Way of Kings. Anyhow, the plot in the beginning of the story with The Way of Kings, it feels aimless. It feels like, it's going everywhere. Right? It feels it's more interested in building an epic world than it actually is in telling a story. The only story that is told that I found myself engaging with in the beginning of The Way of Kings is actually the following. It is Kaladin and his struggle with depression. And a lot of the beginning felt, loose, like loose garment that was not tied. But compare this with Ned Stark. There's been a murder, and Ned Stark has to go and investigate. The king, Robert Baratheon, coming to Winterfell and the anticipation and the whole atmosphere, okay? Compare that with all the characters in a Game of Thrones. Even though George R. R. Martin is setting up a world as epic as the Way of Kings, if not more epic, he makes sure for some odd way that we are interested in what is being told and what is happening now for the sake of now. Like, what is happening is interesting now. It's not going to be interesting 4 books from now. That is why I DNF'd to The Way of Kings for the first time. A lot of it felt pointless. But I never felt that the Game of Thrones started out weak. It started out strong, it kept that momentum, and it finished with a bang. And this is why, for the progression and for the pacing and for the plot, I will give it to The Way of Kings, to a Game of Thrones, right? Not The Way of Kings, a Game of Thrones, right? Let's talk about the world building. So there are 2 approaches to world building with these 2 authors. From the feeling I got, right? The Way of Kings, it has a mythological, religious epic feeling to it, right? With Odium, with the dreams that Dalinar has, and with the first prologue. And compare that with, A Song of Ice and Fire and its world. In a Game of Thrones, the feeling I got was that this is a muddy world. And the theme I got is that the greed of man causes problems, right? Because every problem in the story, it's because someone is hungry for power, it's because someone is corrupted, it's because someone is looking for something and they don't care whoever they step over, right? Or on, whoever they step on. But compare that with The Way of Kings, it felt epic. There was religious mythology to it, okay? I don't know why, but I feel like, technically speaking, when Brandon was describing the, mythological aspects of the world of Rosha, it felt as if this was like a religious mythology in some sort of a Bible. And that gave it some oomph, some fire, some breath. And I preferred that to the muddy, gritty world of a Game of Thrones. And there is this, negative influence that a Game of Thrones has had on popular fantasy culture, where new authors, and in fact, a lot of modern fantasy that has come out in the last decade, the worlds are much darker because of Game of Thrones. It is obvious it's because of Game of Thrones, all right? And yeah, I don't like that. I think that a story should really not try to be just dark blood, gore. It should have depth. The world of Game of Thrones has depth, but at the end of the day, if I were to choose which world do I prefer the world of A Song of Ice and Fire or Rosha? Rosha wins any day, every day. It just is well done. It's just way better, okay? So, who wins this struggle, this fight, this war, this death battle? Well, I have to choose based on the biggest bias I have. I don't want to let my biases go unspoken. And it is that I prefer well-done characters who have flaws and that are well-tested over actually the reality of flat characters that are well-tested. And George does a great job having morally ambiguous characters and testing his characters very well. And I think that is the hammer for me. I prefer, at the end of the day, a Game of Thrones over The Way of Kings. And this is a very difficult statement to say for me because I love these 2 books very well, but that's what it is. I prefer a Game of Thrones. But remember, this is not just about me. Share which one of these 2 books you prefer down in the comments below. I hope that you have a great day.